Hello, friends, and welcome to the Optimized Advisor Podcast, where we focus on optimizing the well-being and best practices of insurance and financial professionals today. On this show, our objective is to help you optimize your life, optimize your profession, and learn from other optimized advisors. I'm your host, Scott Heinila. We hope you enjoy the show. Justin Woodbury, welcome to the Optimized Advisor Podcast. Thank you for coming in this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
Chat with us.
Appreciate it.
We were introduced through, which I'll say his name, trying to leave him off here, but he was a past guest, friend of the show, so to speak, Travis Idenoff. It was actually a really, really good episode. We dove deep into seminar marketing, which we will touch today on. Today's all about marketing and business development strategies, do's and don'ts, best practices, what to avoid, all that. You and I are going to unpack some of these items. But they were very, very insightful. He was very kind and generous to be here. It was a great episode. Nick was sitting next to me in that episode, actually. And as you can see, the cameras are set up here. Well, Nick's big fat head was right here blocking Travis. So instead of it being an audio and video episode, it was reduced specifically to an audio episode. But the audio is good, and it was great to have him in. Anyways, you and I were introduced to that. I don't want to steal your thunder. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Say a little bit about yourself, how you found this business or how it found you. Because I find that in most of the time, unless your dad was in the insurance business, nobody ever kind of pursues insurance as their profession. It either somehow finds us or we kind of fall into it. But I don't know if that was your story, but go ahead, do tell.
It's a pretty unique story, actually. So I grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and grew up in an environment where everyone was, I was homeschooled. We were taught that being in ministry, so being like a minister or a worship leader or something, was the highest calling that you could ever have. So they would say, if you're called to be a minister, don't stoop to be the president of the United States. So to that end is how we were raised.
Interesting.
Very interesting. So I graduated from a non-accredited college in 2003 and was a worship leader for 6 years. In 2009, I needed to get away from that scene. So I moved to Denver, Colorado, and I was going to join the police force in Denver, Colorado. During that time, I was living in the garage.
So from a pastor to a cop, basically where the life goals to this point. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Well, and the only reason the cop is because it was the only place I could find. I'm sure there was others, but at the time, my brother-in-law and sister lived in Colorado, and Denver Police Department was the only place I could find that did not require an accredited degree.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So went there, was living in the basement of a guy that was at the church that my brother-in-law and sister were in, and was trying out for the Denver Police Department. Met my soon-to-be wife during that time. Around the same time that the police department was going to offer me a third shift, working midnights, I job where I would have to work my way up. I was about to get engaged to my wife. At that same time, the guy that owns the house of the garage that I was staying at offered me a job, and he said I worked for an FMO. I had never heard FMO before.
No, nobody has.
No. And so he slowly explained it to me, but I got my start 2010 as a marketing assistant at an FMO. And that was my first introduction to anything insurance. I had no idea what any of that was. And the owner who gave me the job told me, there's no glass ceiling here. As long as you work hard, you apply yourself, you can grow as high as you want. And so I don't know if it was because I've outworked people or I just outpassed a lot of people, but in 2020, I became a chief marketing officer, and I was in that position from 2020 to 2024. And then in October of last year, 2024, I resigned.
And you've recently launched your own business at this point.
I did. So I was out of helping advisors. So, and Scott, I think when we first met, I kind of told you this, but I would get up every morning. My interpretation of working hard for the company was serving the advisors. And I loved it. It's what got me up every morning, is knowing that I was going to be able to go in, show up for advisors and support them. Mm-hmm. When I became chief marketing officer, now I was in charge of an entire team to support advisors in all things marketing. And we were passionate about it. I loved it. So when I left the FMO space, about 6 months into it, I went to a conference where there's a lot of advisors and reconnected with a lot of advisors. And it made me realize how much I missed working with advisors. So I did. I went back into it and supporting advisors now.
Besides insurance, what are your passions in life?
Besides insurance and marketing and helping advisors, you ever read the book Start With Why by Simon Sinek?
Yes.
I took a course by him to actually find out what am I passionate about, because when I was a worship leader, I was passionate about faith music and leading people in music. And when I was in marketing, I was passionate about that. And I got my Series 65 when I left the FMO, and I was really enjoying helping clients. So I think my passion, my why, outside of my family, but my why is showing up for people during significant times in their life, so they feel inspired and support. That is my why. That's what I do.
That's how your flame stays burning.
It is, yeah. I am on fire when I'm able to help somebody, whether it's with showing them a plan and retirement analyzer and saying, you just converted this 401k into a Roth over the next couple of years. You're going to be able to leave this much more tax-free to your beneficiaries.
Yeah.
Love those conversations. Or whether it's getting on the phone with an advisor and helping them solve a problem, whether it's, in front of more people.
Let me ask you a question. I'm curious, because you were introduced to this acronym FMO, which you now know stands for Field Marketing Organization.
Yes.
How would you describe what an FMO is based on your professional experience?
My professional experience. So it's interesting. What I thought an FMO is a company that comes in to serve the advisors and getting in management. And since you're leaving that FMO and having experiences with FMOs, I want to boldly, clearly state that not every FMO is like this. Right. I don't think we had the conversation, and you wouldn't be talking to me either if we were like that. Right. But my experience was there are a lot of FMOs that underserve and overcharge. They make a lot of money, but they do it by underserving the advisors.
Right.
That has been a large part of what my experience has been.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing and this is sales in general, right? It does start with the ability to sell something. And I think sales begins with education. In order for me to be a good salesperson. Now I also have to be tactful and good with words and all that. My point is, I can be really good at selling promises and selling expectations, but then not be very good with the execution and the fulfillment of those promises and the expectations that I set. So it's the old adage of like under promise, over deliver, which is really hard to do actually also, right? How do you be really, really good at selling? By under promising and then you actually fulfill over delivering versus the alternative of, well, I'm just going to over promise everything, sell really, really good, and then not deliver half as much as I promise. And that's a delicate balance for advisors, for I think many FMOs in the industry. So to set a pin, I asked you about field marketing organization, FMO, because it's just another one of the labels that our industry came up with versus an MGA or an IMO or all these other acronyms that the insurance world comes up with, that I think there's nuanced differences between one and the other, I guess, but they're really, the difference is innate in each of us as the firms, and the cultures that we have, the perspectives that we bring to the table, and the viewpoints that we have about the industry as a whole. And you and I were talking about this a little bit earlier. Ours really is a different perspective than many of good culture fit first. Are you a good person? Not just a good person, but are you a good culture fit for us and our community? It's okay to say we're not for everybody, and to be disciplined in that regard. And so is the case for an advisor's practice. So put a pin in that, because you had given me a very specific example that I want to talk a little bit about, of defining your ideal client profile, i.e. your niche, and how that can really, really drive true success for an advisor's practice. So don't forget about that thought.
Okay, about that.
Okay. All right, let's take a step back. In your role in your expertise in CMO, you saw and felt a lot of advisors' practices and ways that they could effectively market and scale their business. Let's start with the advisor in growth mode, the one who really still needs to grow, attract new clients. Your direct expertise has been probably more so in the area of seminar marketing or educational workshops than others. But what would be, in your opinion, or from your experience, all of the different facets or options that an advisor could tap into to help grow and attract new clients and grow their business? So seminars is one.
I feel like the reason why seminars are brought up so much and that is because I could start a practice today and I could do a seminar 6 weeks. And Scott, you pointed this out when I thought it was really powerful, because I never quite thought about it like this before. I used to tell advisors, you can do a seminar today and be right in business next week. But the truth is, 6 weeks leading up to that is the mailer, right? We'll do it, what you said. And then you got a first appointment, second appointment, third appointment. So I think how you put it, I don't want to steal your words, but the way you put it, I thought was great. You don't plan on, if you can't do 3 in a row,
right?
Don't do one, and you can't wait 90 days. But with that being said, radio usually takes 6, 8, 10 months. TV is the same. So seminars is probably the quickest way to get in front of qualified prospects.
And start generating revenue. Yeah.
It's not the cheapest, but it is probably the quickest way. And I think that's why some of the times they're so popular. But seminars, definitely, radio specifically is hot these days. It's even outperforming, from what I've seen. In some ways, it's outperforming TV right now, which is interesting. It wasn't like that a couple of years ago, but I've seen it. Online leads. Yeah. I've seen guys write so much business from online leads. The podcasts. Absolutely, podcasts. The key to any of that stuff, though, Scott, what I've seen, because I sometimes have a marketing panel while I was with the FMO, and I'd have some of the top advisors get out, including Traps, who kills it in a business. He's so successful, and he's such a humble guy. But he thought outside of the box, and he wanted the outside of the box support. But he would get up and talk about one way that he was marketing, and another advisor would get up and say something completely different. And they were both successful advisors. So it wasn't necessarily the channel that they were using. It was the fact that they were doing it frequently and consistent. And so one advisor explained that I choose what marketing channel you want to use, whether it's seminars, radio, online reads, podcasts, seminar marketing, YouTube, marketing, any of that. Pick it, be consistent with it and frequent with it. And you can't not be successful.
Justin, what you're saying reminds me of Matthew McConaughey's biography, who he wrote himself, and he actually did the audible of it, so you get to hear his, which is the best way to actually listen to the book as opposed to reading, because he delivered it in a very unique way, where he himself would remove himself from the literal dictation of the book and say, note to self. And he'd say, some like words of wisdom, and then get back to delivering the book. So it's very unique. Anyways, he went through a chapter in his life where he found himself saying yes to every project and doing not just acting, but other things. And he came to this realization in his life, I'm doing so many different things. I'm spread so thin. At best, I'm probably getting a C+ if I were to give myself a grade in all these things that I'm doing. And yes, I'm doing a ton of stuff, but I don't live for C+ grades. I want to get an A in everything that I'm doing. So at that point in time, he decided, I need to cut out all the bullshit and get down to what matters most and refine who I want to be as an actor in this case, and only say yes to the jobs that are meaningful to me and do the things that are meaningful to me. And I'm going to do everything that I do is now going to be done with an A grade. And to your point of an advisor in their business, I think a lot of the times, look, as salespeople, we're the easiest people to be sold.
Yes.
Something. Yes. We want to say yes to everything. Well, at some point, you got to realize I can't say yes to everything. Because every time I do say yes, it ultimately leads to a no.
Yes.
So why don't I just focus in on seminar marketing or television or podcasting and do that or two things really, really good? Long story long, McConaughey just did it really, he articulated the story and the importance of that in a very effective way in the book. So I strongly encourage Greenlight. It's a great book, great story.
Normally, yeah. I'm pretty sure my wife read that. I think that's an excellent illustration of good, consistent marketing. Don't try to do a lot of things half-ass.
Right.
Do one or two things
really good
and be consistent and frequent with it. And then if you are, you can't not be successful in marketing.
Just chip away, right? But do something every day on that specific task and refine it, sharpen it, hone in on it. And eventually you're going to be at the top of your game doing X, Y, Z. Because it's the other interesting, hey, Justin, what's the best way to generate leads today? What's the best thing? That's what every advisor wants to know. Well, there isn't one answer, right? Because there's a lot of parameters or particulars that come into play. Who are you? What kind of a person are you? What kind of personality do you have? What kind of clients do you want to attract? Where do those clients associate, right? What experiences have you had in the past? Could that experiences shape your perception and your reality? So it's our role to really help be that consultant, if you will, and also give advisors some honest assessments, some honest feedback. Honest sauce is probably the best ingredient to put on food, in many cases. And it's like, yes, for many, seminars are the way to go. But here's what success looks like. So from your experience, let's talk a little bit about that in the seminar game. What does success look like for an advisor before they get into that business? How many should they be doing? You gave me a good example of over the course of X period of time or number. What is that? How does it all ultimately shake out by the law of large numbers?
But yeah, by law of large numbers. So the way I would explain it to advisors, and you're right, there's so much that goes into it. There's not one size fits all in marketing for any advisor, but if they're specifically interested in seminars and they're in growth mode, because I know we'll probably talk about if they're in, they've been around for 10, 15, 20 years, they need to do seminars. But if we're talking about a purely just growth mode type advisor and wants to do seminars, if you do 10 seminars, 3 are going to be really, really good. If you're going to love seminars after doing those 3 are going to be really, really bad. And you're going to say, swear you'll never do me again. 4 are going to be average. They'll pay for your seminar and probably a little bit more. You can't just do one and have a good or a bad experience and think that they're the best or the worst. You've got to do 3, 4, 5 in a row. You commit to that. Otherwise, you don't really know. Because the law of averages will say 3 good, 3 really bad, 3 average.
Right. Which makes perfect sense. I mean, that's one of the things that we always try and project. If you're going to get into the seminar business, you got to invest in the seminar business. One campaign is not adequate data enough or track record enough to come up with a conclusion. But a dozen campaigns probably is now an adequate data set, right? An experience set to say, okay, what do I really have here? Because there's a number of things in play also. Are you going to deliver the very best seminar from beginning to end? Not just in your preparation, your delivery of the presentation, but how effective you're going to be in the follow-up. The very first time that you do one, the answer is no, of course not. You're going to learn things and tweak your process and your expertise, not just of you, the advisor, but hopefully some of your team as well, on how to make them more successful. And the tweaks that I think every advisor needs to take upon themselves and not just be purely cookie cutter, right?
Yeah. I think another thing to point out too is I found that sometimes I would talk to advisors and they would say, seminars don't work, radio doesn't work, any of that stuff. And digging down, asking the questions, I would find out, yeah, they sent out 10,000 mailers. They got 100 responses. They got 70 people to show up. If it was a 2-night seminar, they set 80% in the room or whatever. So they did everything right. They had all the people come through and they didn't sell any of them. And they were all qualified. And it's hard, I think, to admit this. And as an advisor on the other side of the FMO, I get it, because I've had appointments where they didn't buy. And it wasn't because the seminar sucked. It's because I sucked at some.
Right.
And so I think that's another thing that advisors, and it's weird to say, but we, because I'm an advisor now, we as advisors need to kind of be honest with ourselves and say, is it the marketing or my ability to sell?
Correct. Is it something I'm doing in my process or lack thereof that's causing the lack of output? Yeah. Or, and it's the easier one, just plain point the finger. Yeah. It's that seminars don't work or online leads don't work, as an example. But even that is in that space. The online lead business, advisors will invest in 10 leads. And they'll use that small sampling of data and experience to deliver conclusion emphatically. And I would say in the online lead business, you would need to get to probably 90 or 100 leads before you can even begin to adequately decide whether or not it's working or it's not working, or is it for me or is it not for me?
Yes.
You know?
The cheaper the marketing program, the bigger sampling size, I think. You know what I mean? Like online leads, they're less expensive. You can get them for $400 a piece, and you don't have to spend $12,000-$15,000 on a dinner center.
Right.
So I think you have to experiment more with an online lead and hit through 100 of them. That was another thing that I would see at Advisor. You say, well, online leads don't work. Well, tell me about that. Well, I got a lead on Thursday and I called them on Monday and they never even answered a phone. So we can't do that with an online lead. They're actually actively looking to be sold. They're online searching. They downloaded something or chirped something, become an online lead. You can't wait for you to get this to do that. So again, it's following walk process, and it's not the marketing is not the problem. It's the process that follow over there.
It's like a kidnapping. Every minute counts. You know, for every minute that you're not taking action on that lead is costing you time and money. Because people move on to umpteen other things in life. Days later, they've completely forgot about them filling out that online lead form.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have no, they're gone. Yeah. They're done. They're moved on. That's a good point. So what about podcasts? Do you think, but let me take a statement of what I feel about podcasts. I feel as though podcasts are more of a indirect form of active client communication and retention, probably not necessarily something that I can do as an advisor and think that that's going to directly scale my business. Challenge that or share your thoughts.
No, I wouldn't challenge it. I completely agree. I think if an advisor, if we're still in growth mode and we're talking about growth, I would not encourage an advisor to start a podcast unless he has 3 years worth of income to live off. 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, or if the expectation is you're purely thinking that this podcast is going to have new prospects coming in the door. Yeah, it might happen here and there, and it will in time. You're going to get a client of yours who's like, hey, John, this is my advisor. This is an episode that I thought you would really, think would be impactful because of the conversation you and I just had at the golf course or something. Okay, that's an example of where I guess it could work. Or if you're effectively marketing it through social media, I guess my thing would be maybe you fall on a prospect who's like, hey, I ran and listened to your episode, but nowhere near the success from a new client acquisition standpoint will that deliver as compared to seminar marketing. It's impossible.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this too, because you're doing this podcast, but I'm helping an advisor right now do a podcast in Colorado Springs. And what he's doing is, I said, we talk about this. I started the podcast when I was with the FMO, and I talked to top advisors all over the country. So when I wanted to do that, I bought 5 books and read everything about podcasts because I wanted to be able to do it right. And one of the things I read is you've got to figure out why you're doing the podcast, and you're doing it to make sales and not just provide value. People are going to probably see through that. And since most podcasts are supposed to be entertaining or a value add and not a sales pitch, people probably aren't going to want to listen to it. So this advisor man talked, and I thought, we've got to come up with valuable free content to provide to the clients or people in the Colorado Springs area. First and foremost, it just has to provide value. Mm-hmm. But what's kind of cool about what he's doing is this guy is a tax expert. He's at a tax practice as well. But I've never met anyone smarter than this advisor when it comes to taxes. I feel like that's kind of the niche because some of the mutual advisors we know, if taxes get brought up, will say, I'm not a tax person, consult the tax profession because you can win trouble for crossing that line that this guy has a whole tax practice in the back office. So we can, as advisors, can talk more about taxes because they were on the CPA. Anyways, he's doing taxes and tangents. And
what's the tangent part?
So that is probably the lead.
I love the name.
Part of it, yeah. ChatGPT is great.
Yes.
So 90% of the time it's about taxes, right? Broth savings, whatever, tax avoidance versus tax evasion. The tangents is we'll bring in a client, a high net worth client. An audience is for high net worth people that need to save taxes, and taxes are made of biggest expense. So you will bring in a high net worth client, we'll bring in a business owner, and we'll feature business owners. So I asked this advisor, I said, who do you want as a client? He's like, man, I have the guy that I buy all my jewelry for my light for. He owns this business. I would love to have him for a client. So bring on the podcast. What better way to get a guy to walk through the doors of your financial practice that you want to do business with by sending him an email or calling him and say, hey, we'd love to feature your business and what we do on the podcast. So we're going to bring the guys in and ask him how he picks his diamonds and the 4 C's and all that other stuff. I think they'll become a client.
Yeah. So that's great. Well, and it's a fun topic. So hopefully he's picking things that he's personally interested in, passionate about, and that's fun. The takeaway I have there for an advisor looking to get into the podcast business, so to speak, is treat it as a business. A, make proper investment in the equipment. B, actually formulate at least a minimal business plan. So, for example, for us, it was launching in a brand and identity, not and beyond the name, like literally take real thought into what you want the brand to look and feel like and what is the mission. So for us, it's helping advisors optimize their life, helping them optimize their practice, and learning from other successful, let's call them entrepreneurs or optimized advisors. And so it's those three categories. And the funness is I would say our distorted version of optimizing their life is a tangent.
Okay.
We can do a wine episode or a bourbon episode, or which we've done, or health and wellness, or a holiday time episode. And that's probably the most fun category. But to wrap all that up, it's like, if you're going to get into the podcast business, first of all, what do you want to accomplish? Why are you doing this? And come up with a minimalistic business plan of what its purpose is and what its mission and values and all of that are. And if that fulfills you and you're not expecting direct results from it, then you absolutely should be doing podcasts. Now, the ancillary benefits of a podcast for an advisor are the fact that it's a medium of content and communication. So then it becomes, okay, let's unpack what I could do with all that content. Do I want to take that content to social media, to YouTube, to just sharing those episodes with my clients via a newsletter or an email? There's a whole world now of opportunity that you've just opened up by creating that content.
Yes. And I love this setup if people are listening to this, but I mean, there's 2 or 3 video cameras in there. So now you're getting into what's called multi-sensory marketing, where you combine more than one sense. So a podcast is the audio, right? If somebody goes on YouTube or watches a YouTube short or something, you're breaking these podcasts down into smaller segments. They say that when you're doing multi-sensory marketing, so you're combining more than one of our senses. So in this case, audio or visual reach in people's senses and everything, it doubles the reach in the response because you're combining senses. It's like walking into places smelling, scent break, irreversible, like that seed you smell when you hear whatever, it just magnifies.
So the other, which is what we see a lot of, it's not only an audio file, the video file, but now you also see layering in text, right? So text scrolling through and all that. So all part of the strategies that advisors can deploy to enhance their overall brand experience and either retain existing customers, which is a very critical part of an advisor's practice, but then also ancillarily to attract new clients and prospects and all of that. Okay. We talked a little bit about direct mail marketing in the context of like how I can approach it. And direct mail marketing, do you have an opinion one way or another on how an advisor should get cheeks in the seats at seminars? You know, direct mail marketing or online marketing or any other medium that may exist. I don't know, but those would be the two for me that come to mind.
Yeah. The targeted direct mail is pretty powerful. It's the most expensive. And again, I feel like it tears down in some ways, not in every circumstance, but targeted direct mail marketing is probably the more expensive. You're paying, what do you say, 80 cents, 70?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I'd say that's about where a good quality, you know, your dinner seminar style invitation would cost today.
Yeah. I think targeted direct mail marketing has the highest response rates. I think something consistently that senior citizens like to do is go up and check during the hour every day. Mm-hmm. So they enjoy that. I have seen seminar marketing with the social media marketing work well, and I've seen advisors kill it with that. I just think the response is about half. So half the people will respond. Out of those half the people will show up. Out of those people would show up, half of them will set appointments. Out of those half of them are qualified out of that, and half will buy. So, I mean, it is less expensive and it does work, but it's more difficult to target the right types of people through social media than it is to do it through direct mail. I mean, you can get really specific on direct mail.
Right. So you got to do that much more to get the same results, but it is lower cost.
It is lower cost. But again, if you do it frequently, consistently, it works.
Yeah. What about virtual workshops versus in-person workshops? And then also talk about what your experience has been on a national scale, like regional markets. Because I would imagine you'd have advisors in smaller communities, right? And their ability to be more effective is enhanced than those in a saturated market community like a Phoenix.
Yeah. Virtual events. I mean, I think we all probably know this in 2020. That's just kind of opened up the ability to do a lot of virtual type events, and they became more okay to do.
Right.
And so now I know advisors that only do virtual consistently, frequently. You can sell virtually now.
What are some of the things that those advisors are doing or possess innate in themselves that differentiate themselves from some of the competition, and how they can effectively do that? And what I'm specifically referring to is not just, so if I'm an established advisor and I have existing clients all across the country and I want to stand to connect with them, yeah, by all means, I could do virtual educational workshops on various topics to all my existing clients. But it's a whole different ballgame when you're talking about attracting and growing the business through virtual seminars. But there's got to be clearly differentiators that an advisor is doing that can deliver those results versus even just the requirements for an in-person workshop, right? Like, it's got to be very different. What is the backdrop, the staging of their presence look like? How are they delivering the virtual presentation? Is it talking in PowerPoint? I wouldn't think that would be very good. Are they going to anywhere in the country, or are they really isolating their marketing in a specific marketplace? Talk to me about what you've seen.
So, and I haven't seen a ton of it, to be honest with you, Scott.
Yes.
A lot of advisors that I worked with, they did a lot of this in-person seminars and stuff. But I do know that if you're selling virtually, it's a completely different process. A lot of advisors try to sell virtually like they do at a seminar, and they wind up blowing it up. And again, they blame it on the marketing, and it's not marketing, it's their presentation. So I know that there's a specific type of way that you present yourself. I would also suggest that the difference is not necessarily the way the advisor presents themselves, but it's the audience that is okay with being virtual is sold. Because I don't think a lot of people are, but the ones that
younger clients would.
Younger clients are, for sure. And other advisors are the ones that are killing it in social media and other ways to do those online webinars. They're embracing that. And I don't consider myself old, but that they even kind of are blowing you away.
Right. Yeah. I think Gen X and younger, millennials for sure, you could be, if you do it right, and I think there's a way to do it right, successfully delivering educational workshops to those generations virtually is something that can be very successful. Okay. Let's pivot a little bit. We touched on it a little bit before, but I've been in the business 15 years. I've been very successfully doing seminars, radio, whatever it may be, to really grow the business to this now level of significance. And debatable, could I stop doing seminars or actually active marketing altogether? Yeah, probably. I don't think anybody ever should. I think it gets to the point where I should be selective in what it is that I am doing, and I certainly should be passionate about the form of marketing that I am doing. But beyond that, let's say I've got a sustainable practice and all of that. Give us a little example of things that you've seen, that you've experienced, a case study maybe of where you've gone in and helped an advisory firm take their business to the next level in an area they probably thought couldn't be possible or didn't exist at all.
Sure. Love it. Let me back up just a second. I used to give this illustration when I would present to advisors, and I love visuals, so this is helpful. It was helpful for me. I think it was helpful for advisors, but I came home from work one day and I was really hungry. And I walked in the kitchen and there's this basket full of our bowl full of red, shiny, brand new apples. Emily must have just gone out, all did that. And so I grabbed first one that I saw and I turned it around, take a bite of it, and I saw this a teeny bite to take out. So I rolled my college, my daughter Judy that age. She was famous for that. So I set it aside. I grabbed another apple and I turned it around to pick a bite out of there. And there's a little teeny bite that had been taken out of that. And so I went through the entire basket of like a dozen apples. I think every single one had this little bite taken out. And so I would tell that to advisors and then they would laugh. And I'm like, that's exactly what you do when you do a seminar and you invite 100 people and 5 of them become clients. And then you do another seminar and you ignore the other 95. You just get a little bite of an apple. The difference is PayPal with the $5 for apples or whatever. They're paying tens of thousands of dollars for their lead generation type marketing. So a case study of that, because I used to stand up pretty confidently and tell advisors, yeah, you need to be going back to your database. As an advisor, I had never done that. So although I was probably right in a lot of things, I would stand up and tell advisors. What was really helpful was becoming the advisor myself and working out of an advisor's office. So when I resigned from the FMO, I joined a couple of advisors. They had been in business for 40 years. They had done seminars off and on throughout that entire time. And they had an entire drawer full of red shiny apples, one little bite taken out. And so it had to be thousands. Yeah. So many. And they had a file full. I mean, they had over 1,200 clients too. So it wasn't be necessarily the ones that had attended. I mean, we still did stuff with that, but we went back to the ones that were just the little bites and they had just been just the name elected. Yeah, just the names and the policies and stuff. So I thought, well, let's put some of that marketing knowledge to practice where I can actually see where the rubber meets the road. So these guys in this particular case, they didn't want to do seminars because they were bringing me on as the added expense. So they're like, we don't want to spend any money in marketing. Make us successful.
You're the money we're deploying.
Yeah. Right. Spend the money on you. Let's see what you got, bud. So we did a couple of things. One, I asked them, I'm like, when's the last time you met? When's the last time you've worked your existing book of clients? And they're like, oh, all the time. Well, when I dug into that, what I found out was their version of working their existing book was every time there was an annuity that came up for, it was coming out of surrender. So whether it's a 5-year product or 7 or 10, whatever, they would bring those in and sell another annuity. That was their idea of working their book. I'm like, but what about this guy that he's not out of surrender for another 5 years? And it's been 4 years since you've seen him or whatever. Mm-hmm. They're like, oh, we'll just wait until we see him again. I'm like, but what about that? And they said, well, they don't have any money. And I said, how do you know? And so after a lot of back and forth, and they were willing to do whatever, but they didn't see the beauty in it at first. But after a couple of months, they agreed, you know what, every time we get an 11-month summary from an annuity, regardless of whether we think they have money or not, regardless of whether or not their annuity is almost out of surrender, we're just going to bring them. And they did that consistently and frequently for about 6 months. So the process was they get an 11-month summary, and I'd be happy to share the email that they were sent to advisors with this college. It's a simple email, but they would send an email for an annual review. They would set the appointment. Those guys would come in. After a couple of months, actually, this was after a couple of weeks, they said, we had no idea how much gold was in these databases. Right. We had no idea whatsoever. They were on track, the last I talked to them, to double their business. And this was just after 6 months of bringing in every 11-month summary. Even if they're like, oh, this guy, they bought a $40,000 annuity, they don't have any more money. Those people either had inherited money or they would give them a referral. And they would bring those guys in. So it was 11-month summary reviews, but then it costed them money. It was referrals from those 11-month summary 3 years. Mm-hmm. And then when we talked about a CRM earlier, they use a completely different CRM, but I help them set up automation because it's not necessarily what CRM you use. It's heavy, scalable, repeatable process. So I went in there and I customized it, and I taught their front office girl that. So she would set the appointment and she would set it in CRM, make me shoot off a bunch of automation and stuff. The coolest thing was after every delivery review, so the client bought, paperwork got sent out, and then the delivery team, they would have a meeting to deliver the policy.
Right.
So after every delivery and after every annual review, so they were already a client, just going to the annual review, the email would go out saying, hey, thank you for being a client. We are trying to expand our digital online presence, and we would be so honored you would leave us a review. So it would be a link, but they would click on each, you can write to Google and allow them to just put a 5-star review or whatever, and then given.
We should consider doing that. You're working on that, I think.
I help those guys claim their Google business listing because it's important. It's so important to respond to Google reviews, positive and negative.
Right.
And so I did. I put this process in place every time the front office girl would close out a deliver me or handle review, the email would get sent out. They went from 0 Google reviews in October last year to in April, they had 40 5-star Google reviews. And around the April, they started getting a call a week from people who say, you guys stand out among the rest. Because Google will rank you higher if you have high reviews. That's right. one of the things in their algorithm where they look for. And so they were getting people reaching out to them saying,
I found you.
I found you. In fact, one guy said, I just fired my current advisor. He's my best friend. I put $1 million in cash. I want to do business with you. And he kept calling to confirm the appointment. It's crazy.
Wow.
So that helped him. So between annual reviews, getting referrals, and asking for Google reviews, they went on track. They were on track to double their business. They didn't spend a cent.
It's always baffling to me to hear about an advisor, and it's few and fewer. I mean, if I'm securities licensed, I have a legitimate legal requirement to meet with my clients on a regular, consistent basis and define what that time is. But at a minimum, once a year. But I find it so shocking that there are still advisors who don't have an active process for regularly reviewing. And I guess from their standpoint, it's I sold this person a 5-year annuity. There's really nothing I can do with it until, and they aren't an investment client of mine. They're an insurance only client. I really don't need to see these people for 5 years. And, in the 58th month of that 5-year contract, I'll reach out to them and we'll schedule an appointment for the 60th month and the annuity matures. Shame on you. First of all, you're negligent. Second of all, there's a life's amount of time that can occur in life events that are so significant in 60 months that if you're not inquiring, you're going to miss out on so much. The other thing we were talking about is over that period of time, how many times were they directly or indirectly marketed to or solicited by a competitor of theirs? I mean, if I met you as an advisor who is doing a seminar in my community, all of a sudden I'm not getting any seminar invitations from your competitor down the street. No, I'm getting probably one a week. And that's just the starting point. I'm seeing it on TV. I'm hearing you on advisor on the radio. I'm reading an article. I'm doing all these other things. You're not talking to me? What's going on? It's crazy. Now, so defend maybe their viewpoint up until now for a moment. What was their take on it all? Besides the fact that, oh no, we know these clients. and we have all their money, there's nothing more to get? Or was it simply just that? It was like this assumptive thought process.
There's just assumptive thought process. Yeah, that was it. And they had never been taught by their FMO any difference. They were taught by their FMO, oh, let them reach out to you.
Crazy.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Please subscribe, like, share, leave a comment, or review. Be sure to check us out on social media at Optimized Advisor Podcast. Till next time.